Hello folks, welcome to Gelvin Valley, map made by Wild Wes for Farming Simulator 15. Welcome back to our harvest here in field number 18. We're slowly but surely chipping this away, kind of on the steepest part of the hill is what remains. Alright, head up through the grain. We don't mind. We can suspend reality. I don't know that we'll finish this this particular session. I don't know if next time I'll choose to do it in two lands, kind of like I've done it here. Seems to have worked okay. We'll just have to see. It's high noon, and we are harvesting away, so hopefully this is in a large field, but you can kind of see across the valley all those golden spots are fields we're going to be harvesting, and we can't even see them all. You know, there's one way up there. I wonder if that's up by the Stonehenge field. Anyway, we have a ton of harvesting to do. Harvesting in full swing here in Gelvin Valley. I'm just pleased to harvest here our largest field. This is a field we didn't have in the past, and hopefully we can make some bank off of it. Although as I look at our cash, we are still trying to pull ourselves out of the hole. Let me see here. What button do I gotta press? End? No, not end. Which one is the bank? No, not that one. I can't even see my help menu. Help menu. It doesn't show. Alright. Combine will continue going. I should quit spinning and giving you all vertigo. And it's kind of a chopped up edge that he has over there. There's no reason for it. That seems to be kind of how Auto Combine is doing it, which is alright. We'll make do. But I was just recalling the last episode where I was sharing some stories of bad interactions with customers, and I bet probably anybody on the planet has had a bad interaction with somebody somewhere sometime, and I just happened to dredge up some from some of the experiences I've had in my working career, which probably pale in comparison to, like I said in the last one, even a simple retail clerk probably has more people rude and obnoxious to him in any given workday than I've ever had in my entire career combined. And it seems like it's getting worse too. I don't know if being polite is just a lost art, or if people are just more worried, have more angst over the economy, or just what it is. People just aren't polite anymore, either in their personal interactions or on the internet. You pull up any article on the internet and you look at the comments below it, and it's sometimes stunning what people will say to one another that, you know, they probably wouldn't say face to face. So I mean, there's kind of a general agitation out there, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But it seems like it's getting worse in the world in which we live. But I was just thinking back on some of the experiences I had. I thought of one more that I had in my early working career. And this was one where, this one was my fault, I would say. in my naivete, if you will, trying to serve a customer. And I think I mentioned in the last video, we did at this firm over 100 low-income housing audits. And these are small little entities individually. They weren't that hard or complex of an audit, but they commanded a lot of time, at our firm, to crank through them. And, they had some level of complexity, but they weren't too bad. But they all looked very similar to one another. They all typically were a type of partnership. They all had the basics in them. They all had real estate, they had debt, they had owner capital that had come in, partners capital, usually a small partner, the general partner, and a big limited partner. And they were always subject to some kind of partnership agreement, if you will. Is that close enough? That doesn't look like it's close enough. But I'll take it, it's apparently... Oh yeah, it landed in there. Now, can this guy find the door, or is he dumb? We shall see. We shall see. So, because these entities tended to look very similar to one another, it was easy to treat them all the same or very similar to one another. And I just remember there was one of these little entities that I started talking to. I think it was a CEO in this case. They call him CEO. We're not talking anything highfalutin. It's just the operator, if you will, of this small rental entity, this low-income housing. Anyway, I was talking to her and asking for some documents, and these were documents that every single one of these entities would have. There'd always be a debt agreement, there'd always be a partnership agreement, there would be a property management agreement, so forth and so on, a developer agreement, for putting the property up. There was tons of these getting put up back in that era. Well, this one, for whatever reason, was a little bit different, and for whatever reason, she didn't have the documents that I needed. And so, one of the things they always trained us, when I say trained us, it was kind of just came with the job, is when you need certain things from a client in an audit setting, a lot of times they don't understand the terminology that we're using, so sometimes we have to ask again in a different way. And it was something, you just did kind of as a matter of habit. If they didn't understand one term, you would come at the question at a little bit different angle, and if they still didn't understand it, you would try again a different way. So this lady here, that's kind of what I was practicing. That's the only excuse I have, and I guess I'm sticking to it. Well, apparently, I was getting obnoxious with my questioning. And don't get me wrong, I don't think I was being nasty. I generally don't treat clients that way. But by repeatedly questioning her, and she had to keep telling me no, she was getting upset. And I didn't pick up on it. And eventually, I don't know how it happened, eventually I got what I needed. But, and I didn't think anything of it. And this was probably in year 2 of my career, and I was up there 4 years at this international accounting firm. It was at least a year, possibly longer, before I even learned that I had ticked off this woman. I was oblivious, and it's really probably up short. I'm not the most perceptive person in the world. Sometimes I wonder, well, how many other people may I have irritated with questions or whatever, and was just clueless and didn't realize it. If the other person was being kind and didn't let on that they were upset, how would I know? Or it could be this person was just a jerk. I mean, that's always possible too. I mean, she wasn't being a jerk to me, but here's what she did. She was irritated enough that she called up our firm and she complained. Now, I would have thought that a complaint would have somehow eventually reached me or would have come up in a performance evaluation, and it seems to me something should have been said to me, but nothing was, at least not in a formal evaluation, and so I was none the wiser. And like I say, I didn't even know about it until at least a year or a year and a half later. And I think it was one of the partners up there made an off-the-wall or offhand comment about, I forget how he said it. He alluded to this as it being a reason that, my advancement or maybe pay scale was didn't advance as quickly as some of my peers. And I was like, what? It just totally caught me off guard because I was just oblivious. And, I guess that's the takeaway I need to have, thinking back on that now, is now that I'm in a role where I have employees that answer to me, if there is ever a client that complains, or the opposite, if they praise one of our people, I need to make sure that our people know about it. So at the very least, if there's a problem or something going sideways, that they can do something about it. If they're making a mistake, to try to correct it. I wish now, I don't even remember this woman's name. I would have been happy to apologize. I just didn't know what my questioning or whatever was doing to her. And so, yeah, I feel bad kind of about that interaction in particular because it was, my fault apparently. And it impacted me, and dang it, nobody ever told me. So I couldn't do anything about it, to try to correct course or anything like that. Some of the other accounts that I gave about customers were kind of customers being nasty. Well, this one here, is that a nasty thing to do? Maybe she didn't realize that if she called up to complain, maybe she didn't realize the impact it would have on me. She probably didn't intend to have it impact my career personally, but it did. So, in that regard, with the customer always being right, it would have been interesting if she would have known kind of how that impacted me, to know that her call did have an impact. But anyway, I still feel kind of funny about that interaction, and just how even ignorantly a person can stumble into upsetting someone and causing an issue. And at this point, many years later, what do you say? It's water under the bridge. Well, then, more recently, so I was 4 years at this company up in Portland, and I think it was in the year 2000. I'm showing my age. I came to work, with my father down here where I grew up at his accounting firm. And so we've had some experiences over the years too. And one of those, there is the phrase out there, don't shoot the messenger, or however we put it. Sometimes when someone brings us bad news, none of us would like to hear bad news, and sometimes we take it out on the person delivering it to us. And in our role as accountants, sometimes, unfortunately, we are the bearer of bad news. That's just kind of the way it is. And I don't do near as much auditing as I used to. Maybe in terms of public perception of auditing as to what it is, like, oh, maybe you found fraud or something, and there was some dramatic thing. Well, most of it's pretty mundane. Occasionally you do find a fraud or irregularity, but we auditors are a lot of times the last ones to find something. Most frauds I think are discovered through a whistleblower hotline or something like that. But occasionally we do find those things, and it's never gonna be a good time. You would think that if you found a fraud and discovered a bad apple at a company, that they would be grateful. It's like, thank you for helping us find this. We appreciate it. Ha ha ha. Nobody likes bad news. And it was just a small not-for-profit. This has been a number of years ago that we audited, where we found a fraud. And I can't remember if I've talked about fraud in here. It was, I would say, a little old lady. She should have known better, but the fact of the matter is she stole money from a not-for-profit. They hardly had it to begin with. Resources are particularly scarce at a not-for-profit entity, and she stole it. She had, it was practically textbook, what she had done. She had a gambling addiction, and I remember they told us about this at school, to beware, to know a little about the personal lives, if you can ferret that out, as you work with people in a company, to know kind of what their position is, what they're being paid, are they living above their means, are they engaging in activities that suggest they have more money than what they really receive in their salary or so forth and so on. So, well, she was one of these people. I don't remember what they were paying her, but she was spending a lot of time in the casino. Just classic. And so it's like, well, where does she get all this money? So we were doing an audit, and it's fortunate. It's kind of a dual-edged sword. I would say she was dumb because of what she did, and I'm thankful she was dumb because, this not-for-profit happened to receive a lot of cash, literal cash, versus checks. Checks are a little harder to steal from. It still can be done, but cash is much easier because there's no paper trail and there's no proof. So if cash shows up at the door, it can easily be pocketed and just never recorded. If I was going to steal cash, I would never record it on the books. And that's why I say this lady was dumb, because she painstakingly recorded the cash that had been received. And so what you would see on her bank statements, bank reconciliations rather, is you would see a whole bunch of what are called deposits in transit. So anybody that's ever reconciled a bank statement will know what that means. It's cash or money you've received, but you haven't yet deposited it in the bank. So it shows up as a reconciling item. Kind of similar to a check that you've written, but it hasn't cleared the bank. These are both reconciling items. Well, it's very common anymore that companies don't have much in the way of deposits in transit. The banking system is pretty good anymore, and when you take money to them, they're right on it. It gets into the banking system pretty quick. And so it's rare anymore to see huge amounts of deposits in transit. And so when we were looking at these bank statements or bank reconciliations, we saw tons of deposits in transit, and they were old. There's no reason at all it should have been outstanding, say, for several months. But that's what we had, and it was just puzzling. So it's like, well, there's cash. Well, where is the cash? So we started asking questions like, okay, you've recorded it, but have you taken it to the bank? This is something we could write up a comment to him, to help him improve. If someone was, or he's going to fall off the road. If they were just holding the cash, in a file cabinet somewhere, and weren't, just being lazy, not going to the bank, well, that's something that needs to be rectified. When you get the pad, you need to take it to the bank as soon as you administratively feasible. Well, we started asking some questions, and the lady who had done it was evasive, and she wasn't getting us the information that we needed, and I forget exactly how I think at some point we just stopped asking questions, and we documented heavily everything that we had looked at, and basically came to a conclusion that she had stolen the funds, because there was just simply no answer, and she wasn't directly answering our questions. And I got the pleasure, if you will, to call it was the board treasurer, the one responsible for the contractor stay on the road. He happened to be vacationing in France at the time, so I made an international call. It was on the other side of the clock. I don't remember if I got him out of bed or just what the deal was, so he wasn't in the best mood. Told him what we had discovered, and honestly, his reaction was kind of strange. He basically laughed. He said, although it wasn't a funny laugh, this particular bookkeeper that they had, there was no love lost between her and the treasurer. I think he maybe was glad for an excuse, to send her out the door. But she had stolen, I think, $25,000 from him, and they were never getting that back. She had gambled it away, and so they got the police involved. They did a whole investigation, and I think in the end, I don't think they pressed charges. And here's the conundrum, that a company or a not-for-profit has. If you are donating to a not-for-profit, would you donate to a place that has just experienced a fraud and all that money was stolen? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Or you might say, hey, this outfit is so poorly run, I can send money to them, but who knows, it'll probably get stolen because they're such a shoddy outfit. That's kind of what can happen when you publicize things like a fraud trial. Man, this is steamy here. So I think they opted to just take their lumps and not press charges. They might have had some insurance to cover it, but I don't think they even took all the insurance they were entitled to. Sometimes you can say, well, I'm not going to go sue this person or press charges. But the insurance company says, well, we will, if we're going to be on the hook, they may go and do it for you. So it's just a nasty situation. They didn't want to have it public. And of course, then that limits what they're able to do with this person who's probably still out there free, still out there gambling. Obviously, they terminated her for cause, but she, for all I know, is doing it to someone else. Now, I bring all this up because of being shooting the messenger. For some reason, I wasn't able to go to the actual board meeting where this was all discussed. Typically when we do an audit, when we get done with it all, we deliver a set of audited financial statements and a couple letters to the board. If we have areas of weakness in internal controls that we discovered, or any other comments, suggestions to help them, we'll deliver a report to the board. And I was gone, so I asked one of our managers to go fill in for me. And he tells me later, he says, you did this on purpose. They basically barbecued him over an open pit. And so he shows up. I don't even think he had worked on the job. He was just filling in, to deliver the message and everything. So it kind of caught him off guard when we were basically blamed almost for this fraud, because how did they say we didn't catch it soon enough? We didn't catch it soon enough. Well, this particular fraud happened right at the tail end of the year that we were auditing. So it hadn't happened in a previous year, and we were lucky to catch it because usually it was starting to happen after year end far enough that we ordinarily wouldn't even look at some of those transactions. And the kicker was, in a prior year, in some of our comments on areas to improve, one of the things we asked the board to do, since it was such a small organization, is to be more involved. We asked them to be more involved in the finances, in the day-to-day. And so we said, hey, you need to start receiving bank statements unopened coming to you directly. You need to ask for copies of the bank reconciliation. You need to scrutinize it yourself or have some other independent employees look at it that aren't involved with it, for some basic separation of duties. Well, they did this for a little while, but because it was a pain in the neck to do it, they eventually quit doing it. And so, had they been doing that, they would have caught this fraud themselves. And of course, when you go into a meeting like that and they're mad, they're upset, they can't even hear all that. But remember the facts. The fact of the matter is they ignored our earlier advice, and it ended up costing them. And nobody hires employees, going into it assuming that person's going to steal from them, but they might. And you always got to have systems and procedures and take care to maintain them, so to plan for those instances when bad things happen. That's just life. Where are you going, tractor? How about you drive out? But they didn't do that. So I'm trying to think here. Tractor, come on. We might have audited them one more year, given them another chance, but they still hadn't implemented, those, internal controls. So finally, I think we basically fired them as a client and basically asked them to go somewhere else. There's a risk, and it's hard to send work away, but given that they weren't going to implement improvements to their system, they were leaving themselves wide open for the exact same thing to happen again. And it's too risky, at least to me. When you're auditing something and people pay us, they think we're going to catch everything. Well, we can't. We only look at a sample of things, and truth be told, there was a little bit of luck involved in finding what we did find here. That's just reality. And when someone isn't even going to protect themselves, well, and I don't want to play with that person. Someone else can take the risk, and it can be on them, if they're going to audit them. So we let them go, let a customer go. Not the only customer we've let go over the years, and it always hurts to do it, but I think in the end it was for the better. Killing the messenger happens, and that's well, not literally, but like I say, nobody likes bad news. This time of year, so I record this, I'm in February, we're in the middle of what we call our busy season, tax season. So we're processing a lot of tax returns for clients, for the prior year, be 2023. And there's some that had a bad year, some that had a stellar year. And when you have a really good year, you can pretty well count on having to pay tax. And you would think a business person would understand that. Sadly, a lot of them don't. And a lot of times when they make all that money in a year, could be a lot of money, sometimes they spend it instead of saving it, for the ultimate tax bill, and they just love it, haha, when you call them up and tell them what their tax liability is, and generally anything over zero gets their dander up, or some of them. And if they don't have the money in the bank, I'm sure it does cause a lot of stress and anxiety, especially if they haven't been paying what are called estimated tax payments kind of through the year. So there's been a few calls like the ad, and we try our best, to have rough figures so we aren't calling them right on the due date, when the taxes are due and they got to come up with all this money. Of course, you want to try to give them time so they can take it all in and make whatever arrangements are needed. Shoot, there was the bill. Well, I got one other bad experience. Maybe I can just relate it in part. And this one is raw. It happened literally a couple weeks ago, and it again involved a little not-for-profit near where I live, and they had a transition in a treasurer, and their bylaws, and they needed an audit of some kind. Well, it's a small not-for-profit. They can't afford an audit. They can't afford hardly anything. So I went and talked to them. I said, here's an alternative to having a full-blown audit. It's basically something called, oh my goodness, stay on the road. It's something we call agreed upon procedures. It's where we're called in and they say, look at this, look at that, and then tell us what you find. So we, I won't belabor the point what all we did. We did exactly that, and we gave them a report. And it took me, well, not just me, staff and all of us, approximately 42 man-hours to do. And so let's just say when I sent them a bill for that, they went ape. And here's the funny thing about the nature of intangible work. I'm sitting here right now on my home computer playing this silly game, but I could, if I wanted to, tap it into my office computer and I could do work. It doesn't matter where on the planet I would be and I could do work. A lot of times anymore, we don't even have to be out at a client's place of business, and we can do quite a bit of work. Well, to these country bumpkins, it's as if they didn't see us doing any work unless we were doing it on site. So they knew that a report was delivered. That took about an hour. They knew that the staff member who was out there 3.5 hours. And so they know that work, was good. And then they said, well, maybe 3 hours in the office to write our report. And so they figured that with about, 10 hours, we would have the job finished. Well, they're just flat out ignorant. Do you ever meet someone who thinks they know how to do your job, even though they have zero experience at it? They think they know how long something should take. And it's just one of the most irritating things to have a customer or somebody say, well, it shouldn't have taken that long. Here's how long we think it should have taken. And you do a stellar job for them, you give them a good report, and they just throw that in your face. And if it didn't happen on site, where they could literally see it with their eyes, well, then by George, it just didn't happen at all. So suffice it to say, I basically got stiffed by this customer. They've already been fired. I will never do business with them again with that kind of a mindset. It's just sad. I would never go to them at their jobs and tell them how they should do it, or think that just seems arrogant. So anyway, the bell is already rung. We're already out of time. So thank you for coming along here to Gelvin Valley, listening to me just kind of rant about some silly experiences. You all have a wonderful day. I will see you on the next one.